Welcome back again. Episode 11. When should you quit your job? So before we even get into it, we've got to do the usual. We've got our cyber word. What's the cyber word of the day?
Yes, sir. Hello, people. This cyber word of the week, it is a cyber word, sorry. Got confused there. It's called ransomware. So you might have heard of this. This is where hackers can lock your files and demand payment. It's sort of in the word ransom. So They're asking for ransom when they've got your stuff. So it's a little bit like when somebody locking you out of your own house until you pay them. So they've got into your system, they got into your car, and they're like, we're not giving it back until you give us our money. So be aware of this. This is what hits a lot of companies nowadays. So if you've ever wondered what ransomware is, that's what it is.
Perfect. So
let's get into this episode.
Yeah, let's do it. So early red flags. What signs tells you a person isn't right?
A person, I think a little bit linking on to the last episode is if they always want to be in somebody's business.
Correct.
If they're always part of the office drama.
Now, yeah, that's good. So then how can you tell how would you gauge what signs tells you a job isn't right?
If I was to link it to the last point, I've got some other things to say, but to link to the last point, if there's too much of that office drama, because sometimes you can get those toxic work environments that, I don't know, people are just too ready to sort of step on other people's toes. It's a bit too cutthroat. So there is such thing as being too cutthroat. I know it is a competitive industry, but there should be a sort of balance there. So I think if you're in a company or in a corporation that you think these morals don't really line up with this is just sort of kill, then that would be my sort of instinct to get out of there. But
so would that be trusting your gut or waiting?
A bit of both. You got to trust your gut, but you also can't move too hasty, if you know what I mean. You got to move correctly and you got to move a little bit calculated.
Exactly. So is that fair to say we've got to strip emotion?
Yeah, definitely. You've got to be, like I said, you've got to be methodical. You've got to be analytical. It's a little bit like, you must have watched this. What's that Keanu Reeves movie?
The one with the dog.
Yeah, the one with the dog.
Why do I know it? Why don't I know the name?
John Wick. So
which one? What 1 to 4?
Any of them, anyway. It's the same movie.
Yeah.
But any of them, you see Keanu Reeves in that. Everything's thought out. Everything's methodical. Everything's. To be fair, it's with a lot of those assassin movies or those killer movies. That is very thought out, and that's how you've got to move, or at least how I try to move in corporate.
Yeah. You know what? You mentioned that. We've got to throw some more movies in because they're just hitting my head.
Okay.
So we can throw in Taken.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Jason Statham. Okay. Probably butchering the name. Transporter. Have you watched that?
I think I have. I have. Yeah, I have watched that.
Put it this way. Put them in any situation, they know how to deal with it.
Yeah, facts.
And it comes off of being methodical and really taking the time to think things through. It's not hasty, but there are times where things need to be done and can only work at a particular time.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think any of those sort of detective or sort of crime thriller movies are a good indication of how you should move. Obviously, you're not trying to take anybody's life in court.
Yeah. We're not advocating that.
Yeah, it's not that deep, but we're trying to sort of give you a sort of insight into how you want to think and what you're thinking behind the moves that you're making. But are you agreeing with me there that you trust your gut, but then you've got to analyze when's the right time to step or not to step? Correct.
I do wholeheartedly agree. Guys, I know you guys probably feel annoyed that we share the same opinion, but I genuinely do feel the same.
No, but do you have, so I talked about that, but do you have anything else that tells you that the job isn't right? Is there anything that I didn't say? So I talked about if there's too much drama.
Ultimately, I think it's people is what's gonna make or break that for me. So you need to read the writing on the wall. Like, really assess how long do people tend to stay in a company for. Do they is that turnover rate quite low or high? And then what's promotion prospects looking like? Are there case studies? All of these things, when you add these, it's a combination to let you know if this is somewhere you want to stay or somewhere you need to run from.
Exactly, yeah. You need to take everything, almost to sort of like plot everything out and say, is there too many cons here that are outweighing the pros that I'm getting from working at this company? Obviously, one of those pros should be pay. Everybody should be getting paid their money, but you've basically, it's your own judgment, isn't it? Nobody else can tell you whether you what your gut's saying, but you want to have that intuition to know when it's you're right to leave and when you're not right to leave.
Because ultimately, the latter end of that is you end up staying too long because people get comfortable.
Yeah, but that's easy though. That's I'm. You do need to be aware of that sometimes people stay too long, but I'm also I didn't think of this. I thought when I joined corporate I'd be dotting around everywhere, but you do get those organisations that sometimes just feel right, but you have to check yourself. I think sometimes
100%.
that you can't. Everybody wants comfortability. Everybody talks about, I don't know, outside of corporate, people talk about financial freedom or being healthy and having the body that they want, being comfortable in their own skin. But it's also corporate, being comfortable in your corporate career, in your corporate position, it takes into, I think, money. Let's be honest, that's a big value.
It's a dirty subject, but yeah.
And I think what is maybe coming to like more with this new generation, I think we just about make it in, we're not too old for this, is that people really value that work-life balance that maybe was not before. People were just grinding. But basically what I'm trying to say is that it's easier said than done about not getting comfortable, because it's very easy to get comfortable in corporate. You're getting paid the same check at the same time every month. You might be seeing not the exact career growth that you want, but you're seeing some job growth, so you just think, oh, I'll stick it out, and I know it's an absolute crap show out there, so on the job market, so I'd rather stay comfortable and stay put where I'm at.
Yeah, I do hear that. And I fear a lot of people do that, but you can't. Me personally, I'm not advocating for it. I feel if you've got this is where simply if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail, and you should be happy for a plan to be adjusted, because life is life. Things happen that you can't account for, but ultimately, this is why if you're staying on top of your 1 year plan, 3 year plan, 5 year plan, 10-year plan, you'll make sure the necessary motion is being applied.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about staying too long. Let's put a number on it. Is leaving after 6 months bad?
Yes.
Across the board? Because I'd say that's also situational.
You know what? For the most part, yes. The only reason why it'd be acceptable is if you're a contractor.
Yeah, but also I think it's. Sorry, you said it's bad, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I agree with that. So, especially what I'd say, we know that a lot of our listeners are listening from university and that whole grad scheme application phase. So 6 months is way too early to be leaving your grad scheme job. I'd say there's a reason why grad schemes are 2-3 years in most cases. So that gives you a real insight into what your industry is like, what the organization that you're at is like. But yeah, if you're dipping after 6 months, what have you really learned? I'd say
it's true. You know what? Everybody wants to claim to be the Albert Einstein. We're not that. We're not them dudes. Let's just be real. Yeah, 6 months is way too short. We have to ensure we're learning what we need to learn, and that sometimes that does take time. But if you're a boy genius or woman genius or whatever type of genius, then prove me wrong.
Yeah, definitely. But it's easy to get comfortable, but you've got sort of that balancing act. Obviously, we're always talking about pros versus cons or good versus bad. But when it talks about comfortability, you're sort of talking about fear versus logic. You're talking about fear of leaving your job, but also the logic of staying in your job, whether do they balance out?
Yeah.
And then it's
Does it still serve the purpose that it was intended when you joined?
Yeah, and then ultimately you've got to, whatever decision you've got to make, you've got to have conviction with it, and you can't have any regrets. So that's why think it out, weigh everything up, and then just shoot. You only want to shoot once, so you don't want to be reloading and trying to aim again, because then that becomes a bad indicator of your own self, not sort of knowing where your own head is at.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely better than the sort of way the industry was 10, 15 years ago, when we had this stigma of sort of job hopping. I think job hopping is way more accepted nowadays, wouldn't you say?
It is, because, yeah, the job market it's changed vastly. I think we even saw something on the news recently where it's talking about we've got the highest, it's by the UK, by the way, highest unemployment rate since peak COVID. Jeez. So it's not looking good, bruv.
It's definitely not. Shout out Castillo. It's not looking good. The market is,
it's
you know the word I'm looking for.
Cooked.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Absolutely cooked.
Yeah. But job hopping, I'm happy that it's not a stigma anymore. I'm happy that people sort of have a career plan and they're more knowledgeable of how they want to step.
But do you think it's?
I feel like it's because of people. I'm not bigging ourselves up too much, but our community that we're building here at It's Techie is for that reason. So we're telling people that you can job hop, but that's how people have. It's become acceptable through social media like LinkedIn and on TikTok.
Do you think it's completely accepted?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say it's even normally the UK. Talking from a UK perspective, we're a bit behind the US. And whenever US started doing anything and it becomes cool, then we sort of follow suit.
Ride the wave.
We're talking about remote working. We're talking about anything. So the job hopping stigma, I think over there they got onto it very quickly because they're very money. If they're all about their dollars, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But we've sort of inherited that, I think, in the British culture, that job hopping is, you're not saying that, oh, screw this company when you leave.
No.
It's actually, what do I want to do? It's, especially in your early career, I'd say job hopping is good. Is obviously, yeah, it gets you up those wage structures quicker, but also you're trying to add stripes to your bow, aren't you? You're trying to add more skills, upskill. But there's only so much you can do in a position, isn't there?
You hit it. That's exactly the point that I was gonna make, because sometimes that challenge or lesson you needed to learn, you've learned it, and that company can't offer that to you. For me, I thrive in being in an environment where I'm being challenged. So if I'm not being challenged, I'm not getting job satisfaction. So if I'm not getting job satisfaction, what am I doing here? We're all numbers. So if I was gone today, someone's going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that we've got to stress to the audience, is that when we're saying the market is cooked in terms of jobs, we're talking it's cooked because it's so much more in the corporation, the organization's favor, because for every one position, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people are applying to these jobs. So yeah, you'll be replaced quicker than no time. I mean, that CEO last year, not to be too morbid about it, but that CEO in America of a big pharmaceutical company was like outright murdered on the street, and his job was on LinkedIn the next day.
No way.
It's mad.
Really?
Yeah, swear down. I don't know what the name of the company is. We don't want to get into no allegations, no lawsuits. Don't come for us. But allegedly,
yeah, guys, I'm not laughing at what he said. I'm just laughing at just how unbelievable that you're here today, gone tomorrow, and your job is posted.
Exactly, because it's there's
can't
no
even make it up.
That's why we're talking about this job hopping stigma, is that people have come round to that there's no loyalty on the organisation side. There always used to be this sort of automatic sort of loyalty from the employee side, that they just thought that the employee would be loyal through thick and thin.
Yeah, because I think that was because back in the day you had a job for life.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not the case anymore.
But also,
So why would you need to be loyal?
But also, people are talking about their stories, aren't they? So, like I just told you
Yeah.
that's a bit of a morbid story, but people are talking about their stories where they've been laid off for nothing. They don't know why they've got laid off, and then that makes me think as a consumer of that content, like, geez, if they can lay off this geezer like that, then they could lay me off in my organisation. So why am I being so loyal through situations that don't sit right with me? But we're not talking about being like sort of. You don't want to be reckless with it though when we're talking about job hopping, because there's situations that I've had in previous organisations where I had a very high skilled colleague that was very 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 technical. It had a lot of technical skills that made them very valuable, but they just quit without a job because they weren't doing the sort of role that they thought they wanted to do and they saw themselves doing. So that it's that sort of balancing act again. We talked about fear and logic earlier. This is more bravery versus recklessness. So in my opinion, and I think you agree here, my broski, is that you can't be quitting without a job, can you?
No, man. Bills got to be paid. You know, just put the fries in the bag. It's got to be done. Why are you quitting your job? We've got financial goals that we need to reach. Need to be paid, man.
But let me play devil's advocate here, because people would say there's certain circumstance or we'll get to a certain stage where a paycheck is not worth it because of mental health or something like that. We talked about those office dramas early in last week's episode. Somebody might quit a job without anything lined up because they just feel that it's not worth it. That I don't want to be too outlandish with it, but that trauma is just not worth it.
I'll be honest, not qualified on this bit when it comes to mental health. So I say this very loosely. And if I'm wrong, please tell me that I'm wrong. Hold me accountable. But there's support available to manage this before it gets to that point. I do understand that everybody has a different breaking point and may not know it. So that's why it's sometimes missed. But please, if you do feel like that, speak to people. It's communication.
Yeah, and I think people, the organisations, well, at least in the UK, where we've got a little bit more backing for our employees. So big up the UK and in this aspect that the employees do have to have that sort of backing. And
there's a duty of care towards well-being.
Exactly, there's a duty of care, isn't there? So I think some people outside the industry may not understand. They might think that everybody that you speak to will be, if you say anything bad about the company, they'll want to sack you tomorrow. That's not the case. Like you said, there are those individuals in HR or other departments that have a duty of care to really understand where your head's at and get your feedback on things. And if something's going on, obviously mental health wise, then speak up and speak your truth.
Yeah. And don't feel any type of way about that. Your truth is your truth. And yes, it may be hard to hear or embarrassing at times, but you are who you are.
Yeah, I can't really relate to that, like we said, so that's why I speak to the counsellors out there. But I've never been in a situation where my paycheck has not been worth it. I've always done that balancing act, and I've always come out like, oh, I should probably stay on, or if I was in that. If I have been in that circumstances where I've wanted to shift, I've always lined something up afterwards, so I'm not just moving willy nilly. And hopping without a job lined up, that's just a bit reckless for me. That's a bit.
It is.
That's what we call moving incorrectly.
Yeah, we got to step correctly around here, but that's perfect because that moves on to our next thing: growth versus loyalty.
Yeah.
Does loyalty even matter anymore? Remember, let's give context. In the UK and in this job market crisis, in this current climate.
Yeah, I don't think this is a UK related question. I think this is a global question, because these companies that we're talking about now, they've got to such a size that they are global. It doesn't just affect one culture anymore. So when we're talking about the big boys, the Googles, the Microsofts, the AWSs out there, yes, they're US companies, but they're just as big in the UK that they are in the US, if you know what I mean. So does loyalty matter? It's a tough one. It's definitely a spicy debate. Loyalty, yeah, it does matter, but also it doesn't. I don't know how to answer this correctly, because we can't. You introduced it as loyalty versus growth. I don't think they should ever get in the way of each other. So this shouldn't be the battle. It should be sort of loyalty. You should just be loyalty to doing a good job, basically, and giving back to society. Like, every job, whether you think it or not, has an impact on society in a certain way. So we're cybersecurity folks. So what is our job? If you just boil it down to, we're helping keep the new digital landscape as secure as possible, as life becomes more reliant on automation and softwares and apps and everything. Digital wise, we're out there to look out for people's backs. You might have your lawyers saying that they might just feel like they're doing a lot of paperwork, but actually their job has real life impact on people's lives, doesn't it? So the loyalty you've got to have is to yourself. I think that's where I'm trying to come from, is that you've got to have loyalty to why you got into the industry. If your main goal to get into corporate was to earn money, then stick to your truth. Be loyal to, then you're probably going to be job hopping every few months because that's what you're loyal to. But if you're loyal to doing a good job for society, then you might stay at a company that's got a bit of a crappy culture, because you might have that sort of burning desire inside of you that I want to make this culture right. I want to sort of be part of the solution. But you've got to be careful with that, because in this dog eat dog world, you can't let that loyalty get in the way of your growth. But what would you say? Would you say that it matters or not?
Somewhat. It's techie. It's very techie, this one, because I don't think they should even be compared full stop. It shouldn't be compared, but I think the point that I want to make is growth is important. It's very important, and I think you need to highlight where is it you're growing, what direction are you going to grow in, and then also understand where the company's growing.
Yeah.
And I feel like if the growth is aligned, loyalty is a default.
Yeah, that's true.
It only becomes different when you're misaligned and you're going in two different directions.
But then where do you know where your values start and end then? When do you ask for more, whether that's money-wise or sort of whether you want more responsibility within the company?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know? Are you just being loyal by asking for more work or trying to do better for the company? Or do you know your value and you're like, actually, this is going to lead to career growth for me?
I think it's knowing. It's going to sound selfish, but you have to know your own personal value, and because you have a shared vision and a goal, unilaterally it will align. So I know I've kind of ducked the question, but it serve the purpose that serves you until it no longer serves you. That's what I'm gonna say. Take from that what you will.
When you get on, let me give you an anecdote. When you get onto that aeroplane, when you're hoping for a safe flight, and the stewardesses and the stewards flight attendants are going through the safety procedures, what did they say first?
Put on your own face mask before you even help others.
Exactly. So we're not saying that you can't help others, but you got to help yourself first and put yourself in a position where you can help others. That's
it. So that's to even add to that analogy. That means sit near the emergency exit.
yeah, be ready to dip. What we're trying to say is that you've got to, if you're not looking after your own self, then you can't look after anybody else.
Yeah, you're not good to anybody if you're not right.
Exactly. So unfortunately, corporate is a dog eat dog world, and you do have to, because that might not come naturally. If we're thinking about it from our It's Techie family perspective, and these young professionals that are just joining the industry, they're like, that is just so against sort of humanity. But I think people realize that is humanity, isn't it? That's general in the world. If you don't put your own seatbelt on, then how are you going to help somebody else out if they don't have their own seatbelt on? You know what I mean? So it's very much, you got to sort of, we talked about selfishness before, I know, on last podcast, and podcast is before that. But we're not talking about being selfish just for the sake of being selfish. We're talking about it so that you can get yourself into position of power and get onto the table. And then, yeah, feel free to bring other people onto that table. But if you're not on that table, then you can't bring anybody to the party, innit?
Agreed. And that segues beautifully into the next bit. And that is, how do I resign professionally?
Bruh. I don't think there's a blueprint to resigning professionally. I don't think it's a circumstance. Obviously, I don't know, if you're leaving on good terms, obviously it's a bit of a difficult conversation. But also if you speak to management themselves, I don't think they ever like letting anybody off it unless they're a bit of a psychopath. I don't think anybody likes having that conversation. So whether there's a professional or unprofessional way of doing it, I wouldn't really say there is, but just be honest with the situation. This is why you always have to have your own ducks in a row first, though. You've always got to don't quit the job or resign without having not just being successful in an interview for another job. I'm talking signing the damn contract. That's why you need to know how long your notice period is. So until you have that next job lined up, as in that signed, sealed and delivered, then you have that conversation. So in terms of professionally or logically or sort of selfishly, you need to have your stuff lined up so that you can have this conversation with no qualms, and you're very, very cut and dry, because you don't want no ambiguity out there, do you?
No. I think it's important to let everybody know where they stand in good and bad situations. I think you can resign professionally, and Kash has actually answered that and gone into depth with it. What I would add to that is, as long as you're transparent in what you're saying and everybody knows where they stand, you can leave the room as friends, because at the end of the day, if they genuinely got the best interest for you, they'll be happy for you. Yeah. So you shouldn't feel any two ways about resigning. You're doing what you need to do, which is going against your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year or 10-year plan.
Yeah, and you've got to remember that corporate or the sort of professional industry, it's not like an unlimited cup. It's a big industry, billions, trillions of dollars, pounds, and it pays for a lot of people's livelihoods, and it supports a lot of families. Mm-hmm. But it's also like a little bit of a closed group. As in, what I'm trying to get at is, if you make a bad impression when leaving, that's sometimes just as important as the impression you made when you were doing your job. So if you leave on bad sort of vibes, then just say, I don't know, you dip from your first company and you go somewhere because it's about career growth and getting that money in your pocket, whatever. But what if you there's another job that opens up in 2, 3, 4 years time that's back at that original company?
You fluffed the opportunity.
They're like, no, you moved like this when you were leaving, so why would we hire you? Because people remember stuff, don't they?
They do. Unfortunately, it takes, what's the expression they say? It takes ages to build a good impression, and then
it takes like seconds to ruin one. Yeah,
there you go.
Like that, yeah.
And you fumbled it, because you have to also understand that in life, you may cross paths again, and you don't want to be known as that guy that it's just messy.
I'd even go as far to say, in corporate, it's not even a may. You probably will cross paths with this person again,
or someone that knows. You have a mutual.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody knows everybody to a certain extent. So you need to, just how you're watching how you step in your day-to-day job, you need to make sure that you leave correct. Just as you joined correctly, you want to leave correctly as well, because it's all sort of your own personality or your own career or your own image that you're building in somebody's head, isn't it?
100%.
But we're not saying that you need to tell your people when you're leaving what the real reason is or anything like that. It's just about leaving correctly.
Yeah, that's the main point. So we're going to get into our quick fire now. So, loyalty or leverage?
Oh, leverage.
Dream job or higher salary?
Higher salary.
Notice period. Is it pointless? Yes or no?
No.
Counter offers. Is it a trap or not?
Trap for who? I think it's not a trap.
It's not a trap.
If you're talking from an employee's perspective. So
Okay. Burn bridges or stay classy?
Stay classy. What we literally just talked about. Stay classy.
Perfect.
But back at you. Are you valuing loyalty or leverage more?
Loyalty.
Ooh. And are you about your dream job or do you just want that higher salary?
Dream job.
And then is notice period pointless or not?
Yeah, it's pointless, man.
Oh, wow, we differ here. And counter offers from an employee's perspective, are they a trap?
Not a trap.
And then lastly, but not leastly, would you burn bridges or would you stay classy?
Stay classy.
Exactly. So there you are. That was this week's episode. If you're just listening in now and you've skipped over the rest of the pod, we've talked about a lot on today's podcast about quitting your jobs, when you should do it, should you do it, is there a stigma there? We've also even sort of delved into mental health, but ultimately your company will replace you faster than you think. So look out for yourself and then you can do the best for your next career jump or step or whatever it is. But yeah, look after yourself, and loyalty is not too valued nowadays. So keep stepping.
It's true. And guys, if you can do us, help your boys out, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll be back again with great content. It's Techie out.
Peace.